"Mom, we don't need your pennies anymore. Get out." Those words came out of my son's mouth like they were nothing. Like I was nothing. Like the 30 years I spent raising him alone, working night shifts at the hospital while he slept safe in his bed, meant absolutely nothing. I stood there in my own living room, the same room where I'd rocked him to sleep as a baby, where I'd helped him with homework at that very table, where I'd celebrated every birthday even when the bank account was empty, and watched my only child tell me to pack my things and leave. Laurent didn't even sit down. He stood there tall, chest puffed out, with his wife Janelle beside him. Her arms were folded across her designer blouse, the one I'd never seen before. Her nails were freshly done, painted some color that probably cost more than my weekly grocery budget. And her eyes. God, her eyes looked at me like I was dirt on her shoe. "This is our house now," Janelle said, waving her hand around like she owned the place. "You were staying here temporarily, remember? We're moving into something bigger. Something better. And honestly, our new friends don't need to see some old nurse clipping coupons in the kitchen." Her words hit me like a slap. Some old nurse. That's what I'd become to them. Not Laurent's mother. Not the woman who'd sacrificed everything so he could have a future. Just some old nurse who didn't fit into their shiny new life. Hi viewers, kindly tell us where you're watching from and what time it is. Warm welcome to the family. Enjoy the story. The lottery. That's what changed everything. $180 million. The news had broken the night before, and suddenly my son and his wife walked in here like celebrities, like they'd earned something instead of just getting lucky. Their eyes were bright, almost feverish. I'd never seen them look at anything the way they looked at that money. But they weren't here to celebrate with me. They were here to erase me. "We've outgrown this," Janelle continued, her voice dripping with fake sympathy. "Outgrown you, if we're being honest. Our life is about to be completely different, and we need to start fresh. Without baggage." Baggage. She called me baggage. I looked at my son. Really looked at him. Searching for some sign of the boy I'd raised. The boy I'd walked 5 miles home for because the bus fare had to go toward his textbooks. The boy who'd cried when kids at school made fun of his second-hand sneakers, and I'd worked a double shift so he could have new ones. The boy who'd promised, when his father died, that he'd always take care of me. But that boy was gone. Standing in front of me was a stranger wearing his face. The room felt cold despite the summer heat outside. My teacup sat on the table, half drunk, the rim already cold. I'd made chamomile because I thought we were going to have a nice visit. I'd even scrubbed the counters earlier, wanting everything to look nice for them. The smell of lemon cleaner still hung in the air, mixing with the bitter taste of rejection in my mouth. I didn't cry. I wanted to, but the tears wouldn't come. Maybe I was too shocked. Or maybe, after years as a nurse, after watching people die and families fall apart, I'd learned to hold pain inside until I was alone. Instead, I smiled. It wasn't a happy smile. It was the kind of smile that comes when you finally see something clearly, even though it breaks your heart. And then, with the calmest voice I could find, the same voice I'd used 1,000 times to comfort scared patients in the middle of the night, I said, "Son, did you at least read whose name is on that lottery ticket?" The question hung in the air between us like smoke. Laurent blinked. His confident posture faltered just a bit. Janelle's smile flickered. "What are you talking about?" Laurent asked, but his voice had lost its edge. I kept smiling. "The ticket. The winning ticket. Did you look at it? Really look at it?" Janelle laughed, but it sounded forced. "Of course we did. It's ours. We won." "Did you?" I asked again, softer this time. They exchanged a glance. Something passed between them, confusion, maybe the first whisper of doubt. Laurent's hand went to his pocket, where I knew he kept the ticket. Or at least, where he kept a ticket. This is ridiculous, Janelle said, grabbing Laurent's arm. Come on, we don't have time for her games. But Laurent was already pulling out his wallet, fumbling with it, his fingers suddenly clumsy. He pulled out a piece of paper, unfolded it, looked at it. And his face turned pale. Not white. Pale. The color of someone who just realized they'd made a terrible, irreversible mistake. Janelle leaned over, looked at the ticket, and her perfectly painted lips parted. No words came out. I stood there, hands folded in front of me, watching them realize what I'd known for days. What I'd kept quiet about while I listened to their plans. While I heard them discuss the cars they'd buy, the houses they'd own, the people they'd finally be important enough to impress. They didn't even notice. They never even checked. Because here's the thing about that lottery ticket. The real one. The winning one. It wasn't theirs. It was mine. And tucked away in my desk drawer, inside an old manila envelope next to my late husband's will and my nursing license, was the proof. The receipt with my name on it. The timestamp from the corner store camera. My handwriting on the back of the ticket, carefully dated and signed. They'd been celebrating a win that was never theirs to claim. Laurent's mouth opened and closed like a fish. Mom, You should go now, I said quietly. You have a lot to think about. Janelle's shock turned to rage in an instant. You set us up. You let us believe. I didn't let you believe anything, I interrupted, my voice still calm. You assumed. You took what you thought was yours without asking a single question. Without even looking closely enough to see the truth. They stood there frozen, the lottery ticket trembling in Laurent's hand. The wrong ticket. Some other ticket they'd bought weeks ago that hadn't won anything. Get out, Janelle hissed. This is my house, I reminded her gently. I think you're the ones who need to leave. They left. Stumbling over their words, their feet, their shattered dreams. The door slammed behind them, rattling the photos on the wall. Pictures of Laurent as a baby, as a child, as a young man. Smiling faces that felt like lies now. And I stood there alone in the silence. The lemon cleaner smell seemed stronger now, almost suffocating. My cold tea sat untouched. Outside, I heard their car start, heard the angry rev of the engine, heard them drive away. I walked to my desk, opened the drawer, and pulled out the manila envelope. My hands shook as I touched it. Not from fear. From something else. Relief, maybe. Or vindication. Or just the weight of knowing that everything was about to change. Inside was the real ticket. The winning ticket. $180 million. And they didn't even know yet. They didn't know that their cruelty had just cost them everything. That their greed had blinded them to the one detail that mattered most. That the mother they tried to throw away like garbage was actually holding all the cards. But they would find out soon enough. They didn't yet know the truth. That ticket wasn't theirs. It was mine. And I had every receipt, every camera angle, every piece of proof I needed to make sure justice, quiet, patient, devastating justice, would be served. Do you think you could ever kick your own mother out for money? Drop a comment below and tell me what you would have done in this situation. And if you want to find out what happens when my son realizes the truth, hit that subscribe button right now because this story is just getting started. After they left, I sat in my chair and felt the weight of silence press down on me like a physical thing. The house was too quiet. Not peaceful quiet. The kind of quiet that screams at you, that makes every small sound feel enormous. The refrigerator hummed. The clock on the wall ticked. Outside, a car drove past, and I listened to the sound fade until there was nothing again. I looked at my hands. Nurse's hands. Wrinkled now, spotted with age, but still steady. These hands had held my son when he was born. had wiped his tears when he fell off his bike, had signed every permission slip, every report card, every college application. These same hands had worked thousands of night shifts so he could have a better life than mine. I grew up poor. Real poor. The kind where you wore shoes until your toes poked through, and dinner was whatever you could stretch into enough portions. When I met Lauren's father, Thomas, I thought I'd found my way out. And I had, sort of. Thomas was a good man. He worked construction, and we scraped together enough for a small house and a simple life. Then Lauren came along, and everything felt possible. We weren't rich, but we were happy. Thomas would come home covered in dust and dirt, but he'd scoop up our baby boy and dance around the kitchen like we lived in a mansion. That lasted 6 years. Thomas died on a job site. Scaffolding collapse. 1 minute he was there, the next he was gone. Just like that. No warning. No goodbye. I was 28 years old with a first grader and a mortgage. No college degree. No safety net. Just me and Lauren against the world. So I became a nurse. Went to school at night while Lauren slept at my sister's house. Studied in hospital break rooms. Graduated and started working the night shift because it paid more. I'd leave Lauren with a babysitter at 8 p.m. and come home at 7 a.m., just in time to make him breakfast and walk him to school. Then I'd sleep for 4 hours and do it all over again. For years, I barely saw daylight. I became invisible in my own life. At the hospital, I was just another nurse in scrubs. At parent-teacher conferences, I was the tired mom who showed up late. In my own home, I was a ghost who moved through rooms while everyone else was awake. But I never complained. Because Lauren needed me. He needed food and clothes and school supplies. He needed someone to believe in him when the world didn't care. I thought I was teaching him something. I thought he was watching, learning what sacrifice looked like, understanding that love means putting someone else first. I was wrong. Somewhere along the way, my son learned a different lesson. He learned that mothers are supposed to disappear. That their needs don't matter. That once you've taken everything they can give, you can just walk away. Would you have kept the winning ticket a secret at first, like I did? Hit the like button if you're curious what happens next. I sat there in that chair, staring at the manila envelope on my lap, and felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Not quite anger. Not quite sadness. Something colder. Something that felt like waking up after a very long sleep. My teacup was still on the table. I'd made chamomile because Lauren used to love it when he was sick. I'd sit by his bed and make him cup after cup, adding honey the way he liked it. He'd hold the mug with both hands and tell me I made the best tea in the world. That memory felt like it belonged to someone else now. I stood up slowly, my knees protesting. 62 years old and feeling every single one of them. I carried the cold tea to the sink and poured it out, watching the pale liquid swirl down the drain. Then I opened the envelope. The lottery ticket was inside, folded carefully, protected by a plastic sleeve. I'd bought it a week ago at Morton's Corner Store, the little shop 3 blocks from my house where I always got milk and bread. I'd been going there for 15 years. Mr. Morton knew my name, knew I worked nights, always asked about Lauren. I'd bought 1 ticket. Just 1. I did that sometimes, maybe once a month. Never more. It was a small indulgence, $1 here and there for the tiny thrill of maybe, possibly, winning something. That day, I'd been tired. Bone tired. The kind of tired that comes from working 3 12-hour shifts in a row. My feet hurt. My back hurt. Everything hurt. But I'd stopped for milk anyway because Lauren and Janelle were coming over for dinner, and I wanted to make mashed potatoes the way Lauren liked them. I bought the milk. And then, on impulse, I added a lottery ticket. Mr. Morton printed it out, handed it to me with a smile. Good luck, Delphine. I'd tucked it in my purse and forgotten about it until 3 days later when I was folding laundry and heard the numbers on the news. Even then, I almost didn't check. Almost threw it away with the receipt. But something made me pull it out. Something made me compare the numbers. All 6 matched. I stared at that ticket for a solid 5 minutes, thinking I'd made a mistake. Thinking I'd misread something. But no. All 6 numbers. Perfect match. $180 million. And I didn't tell anyone. Not because I wanted to keep it secret, but because I needed time to think. Time to figure out what this meant, how it would change things. Time to prepare for what I knew was coming. Because money changes people. I'd seen it at the hospital. Families fighting over inheritance while their loved ones were still dying in the bed next to them. Siblings who hadn't spoken in years suddenly showing up when there was something to gain. I knew what money did. I just didn't think my own son would prove me right. But hidden in my desk drawer was a piece of paper that would change everything. And what I didn't know then was that someone would try to steal it from me, the person I trusted most. The day I bought that ticket started like any other. I woke up at 3 in the afternoon after sleeping through most of the day. That's what happens when you work 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. Your whole life runs backward. You eat breakfast at sunset and dinner at midnight. I made coffee, black and strong, and sat at my kitchen table looking through the bills. Electric, water, the mortgage payment, even though I'd lived here for 30 years and should have had it paid off by now. But medical bills from Thomas's funeral had set me back, and then Lawrence college loans, the ones I'd co-signed for and ended up paying when he couldn't find work right away. I didn't mind. That's what mothers do. We pay for things. We handle the hard stuff so our kids can have easier lives. I showered, put on my scrubs, and grabbed my bag. Before heading to work, I always stopped at Morton's corner store. It was part of my routine. Milk for my coffee. Sometimes a banana or a granola bar for the break room. That evening, the sun was just starting to set when I walked in. The little bell above the door chimed. Mr. Morton looked up from behind the counter and smiled. "Evening, Delphine. How's the hospital treating you?" "Same as always," I said, heading for the dairy case. "Keeps me busy." "And Laurent? How's your boy doing?" I paused, milk carton in hand. "He's good. He and Janelle are doing well." It was a lie, but a small one. The truth was, I barely saw Laurent anymore. He was always busy. Always had plans. Always meant to call but forgot. But I didn't want to tell Mr. Morton that. Didn't want to admit that my son had slowly been fading from my life like morning fog. I brought the milk to the counter. Mr. Morton rang it up. $1.68. I handed him $2. And then I saw the lottery sign. Big jackpot. 180 million. The drawing was that night. "Give me a quick pick too," I said. Mr. Morton raised his eyebrows. "Feeling lucky?" "Why not?" I said. "It's just $1." He printed the ticket and handed it to me along with my change. I folded it into my wallet without looking at it, grabbed my milk, and left. At the hospital that night, everything was normal. I checked vitals, administered medications, helped patients to the bathroom, filled out endless charts. Around 2 a.m. during my break, I sat in the empty cafeteria eating crackers and cheese from the vending machine. The TV on the wall was showing the news. I wasn't really watching. I was thinking about Laurent, about how distant he'd become. How Janelle never seemed to like me much, always found excuses to cut visits short. Then I heard the numbers. Tonight's lottery jackpot winners are 7, 14, 21, 35, 42, and Powerball 9. Something in my brain clicked. Those numbers sounded familiar. I pulled out my wallet, unfolded the ticket, and looked at it. 7, 14, 21, 35, 42. Powerball 9. My hands started shaking. I looked at the TV screen. Looked at the ticket. Looked back at the screen. All 6 numbers. Exact match. The crackers in my mouth turned to dust. I couldn't swallow. Couldn't breathe. Around me, the cafeteria was empty except for one janitor mopping in the corner. He didn't notice me sitting there frozen, holding a piece of paper worth $180 million. Do you believe money reveals people's true character? Share your thoughts in the comments. I didn't scream. Didn't jump up and down. Didn't call anyone. I just sat there, staring at that ticket, feeling like the floor had disappeared beneath me. $180 million. I could pay off my house. Retire. Never work another night shift. Never worry about bills or medical expenses or whether I'd have enough for groceries. I could help Laurent. Really help him. Maybe buy him and Janelle a house, help them start the family they always talked about. But something stopped me from calling him right then. Some small voice in the back of my mind whispered, "Wait. Think about this. Be careful." So I folded the ticket back up, put it in my wallet, and finished my shift. When I got home that morning, I went straight to my desk. I pulled out an old manila envelope, the kind I used for important documents. I put the ticket inside, along with the receipt from Morton's Corner Store. The receipt had the date, the time, even my debit card number. Then I tucked the envelope into the back of my desk drawer, behind Thomas's death certificate and my nursing license and Lawrence baby pictures. I didn't tell anyone. Not my sister. Not my neighbors. Not even Mr. Morton when I went back for milk 3 days later. I just waited. Because I needed to see what would happen. Needed to understand something I couldn't quite name yet. Some instinct told me to keep quiet, to watch and listen before making any decisions. That instinct saved me. Because 3 days later, Laurent called. His voice was excited, almost manic. "Mom, we need to talk. Can we come over tonight?" "Of course," I said. "Is everything okay?" "Better than okay. We'll explain when we get there." They showed up at 7, both of them dressed nice, both of them smiling in a way that made my stomach twist. And that's when they told me about their lottery ticket. Their big win. Their new life. Their ticket. Not mine. Theirs. Except it wasn't. They'd bought a ticket weeks ago that hadn't won anything. But somehow, they'd convinced themselves it was the winning ticket. Maybe they'd written down the numbers wrong. Maybe they'd confused dates. I don't know. What I did know was they believed that money was theirs. And they were already spending it in their heads. Already planning a future that didn't include me. That's when I learned the truth about my son. That's when the mother he'd become invisible to finally saw him clearly. And what I didn't know then was that their greed had just begun. They were about to show me exactly how far they'd go to take what they thought belonged to them. The days after that confrontation were strange. Laurent and Janelle didn't call. Didn't text. Didn't stop by. It was like I'd ceased to exist for them, which, I suppose, was what they wanted all along. I went to work. Came home. Made my meals. Lived my small, invisible life. But inside, something had changed. That cold feeling I'd had when they told me to leave was growing, hardening into something solid. I kept working my shifts at the hospital, but now every patient I helped, every family I comforted, reminded me of what my own family had become. Or maybe what they'd always been, and I just refused to see it. On my next day off, I sat at my kitchen table with a cup of coffee and opened my laptop. I'd learned basic computer skills at the hospital, how to use email, how to search online, how to navigate medical databases. Now I used those skills to search for lottery winners and legal disputes. What I found made my blood run cold. Story after story of people who'd won the lottery and then lost everything to lawsuits, family feuds, fraud claims. People who'd had tickets stolen by relatives, by co-workers, by people they trusted. Winners who ended up broke and alone because they hadn't protected themselves. I thought about Lauren and Janelle. About how convinced they were that the money was theirs. About how they'd kicked me out of my own home without a second thought. What would they do when they found out I had the real winning ticket? Would they try to take it? Would they claim I'd stolen it from them? Would they twist the story until I became the villain and they became the victims? Subscribe now if you want to see how this quiet mother turns the tables. The more I thought about it, the more I realized I needed help. Real help. Not just moral support, but someone who understood the law, who could help me protect what was rightfully mine. But who could I trust? My sister lived 3 states away and had her own problems. My co-workers were kind but busy with their own lives. My neighbors were friendly enough, but we weren't close. Then I remembered Mara. Mara Feld. I'd met her at the public library 2 years ago. I'd gone there on a Saturday afternoon, one of my rare days off, looking for a quiet place to read. She'd been sitting at a table surrounded by old newspapers and legal documents, taking notes in a small leather journal. We'd started talking. Small talk at first. The weather. Books. Nothing important. But then she'd mentioned she was a retired paralegal, and something about the way she said it, proud but not boastful, confident but not arrogant, made me trust her. We'd started meeting at the library once a month. Just 2 women in their 60s, drinking bad coffee from the vending machine and talking about life. She'd told me about the cases she'd worked on, the puzzles she'd solved. I'd told her about the hospital, about being a widow, about Lauren. I hadn't seen her in a few weeks. But now, sitting at my kitchen table with that envelope in my hands, I knew she was the one person who might understand. I called the library. The librarian told me Mara usually came in on Wednesday afternoons. It was Tuesday, so I waited. The next day, I drove to the library instead of sleeping after my shift. My eyes were gritty with exhaustion, but I forced myself to stay awake. This was too important. Mara was there, at her usual table, reading through what looked like old court records. She looked up when I approached, and her face lit up. "Delphine. I was wondering when I'd see you again. Sit down, please." I sat. For a moment, I didn't know how to start. How do you tell someone your son tried to steal from you? How do you admit your own child doesn't want you anymore? "Mara," I said finally, my voice low. "I need your help. Something happened, and I don't know what to do." Her smile faded. She closed her book and leaned forward. "Tell me." So I did. I told her everything. The lottery ticket. Lauren and Janelle's cruelty. Their belief that the money was theirs. The way they tried to erase me from their lives. When I finished, I pulled out the envelope and showed her the ticket, the receipt, the proof. Mara studied everything carefully, her reading glasses perched on her nose. She looked at the dates, the timestamps, the handwriting on the back where I'd signed my name. Her expression never changed, but I could see her mind working, fitting pieces together like a puzzle. Finally, she looked up at me. "Delphine, this is airtight. This ticket is legally yours. But if you don't move carefully, they'll bury you. They'll try to reframe this, file claims, make you look like the crazy mother who's trying to steal from her own son. You need 2 things, a lottery lawyer and a freeze order." "A freeze order?" "To stop them from claiming the money before you can prove ownership. If they go to the Lottery Commission first with their story, things get complicated. We need to move fast." My hands trembled. I don't even know where to start. Mara reached across the table and squeezed my hand. Her grip was firm, warm. You start by letting me help you. I know someone. A lawyer who specializes in these kinds of disputes. He's good. Quiet. Thorough. Not the kind who'll blast your business all over town. Can I afford him? She smiled slightly. Delphine, you're about to be worth $180 million. Yes, you can afford him. But more importantly, you can't afford not to hire him. And that's how I met Julian Osei, the man who would help me deliver quiet justice. But first, we had to gather evidence. Evidence that would prove beyond any doubt that my son had tried to steal from the woman who'd sacrificed everything for him. Julian Osei's office was nothing like I expected. I'd pictured something fancy. Leather chairs, expensive art on the walls, a secretary in a power suit guarding the door. But when Mara drove me there 2 days later, we pulled up to a small brick building on a quiet street. The sign outside just said Osei Law in simple black letters. Inside was even plainer. A waiting room with 4 chairs and a coffee maker. No secretary. No expensive decorations. Just clean, organized, calm. Julian came out to meet us himself. He was maybe 50, with gray threading through his dark hair and the kind of face that gave away nothing. He shook my hand, his grip gentle but firm, and led us to his office. Mrs. Carraway, he said, gesturing to a chair. Mara told me a bit about your situation. But I'd like to hear it from you directly. So I told the story again. By now I'd told it twice, once to Mara, once to myself in the mirror that morning to make sure I could get through it without crying. This time, my voice stayed steady. Julian listened without interrupting. He took notes on a yellow legal pad, his handwriting small and precise. When I finished, he set down his pen and looked at me. Mrs. Carraway, I'm going to be direct with you. This case is winnable, but only if we're thorough. Your son and his wife will likely claim they had access to the ticket, that it was a family purchase, that you're suffering from confusion or trying to steal from them. They'll paint you as the problem. My stomach dropped. But I have proof. You do. And that's your strength. But we need more than just the receipt and the ticket. We need an airtight paper trail that shows continuous possession, intent, and legal ownership. We need documentation that they can't challenge. What kind of documentation? Julian leaned back in his chair. Everything. The store's purchase records. Security camera footage from the day you bought the ticket. Your bank statement showing the debit transaction. Any witnesses who saw you with it. Anything that proves this ticket was yours from the moment you bought it until now. Like this video if you believe everyone needs at least one true friend like Mara in their life. I've kept everything, I said quietly. I learned that from my husband. He always said to save every piece of paper, every receipt, because you never know when you'll need proof. Julian's expression softened just slightly. Your husband was a wise man. That habit is going to save you. Over the next 3 weeks, we built the case piece by piece. First, Mara and I went back to Morton's corner store. Mr. Morton remembered the day I'd bought the ticket. He remembered because I'd mentioned Laurent was coming over for dinner, and he'd asked how my son was doing. He pulled up the store's records on his computer and printed out the transaction, date, time, items purchased, payment method. My debit card. My purchase. Then Julian got the security footage. The camera above the register had caught me buying the milk and the ticket, had caught Mr. Morton handing it to me, had caught me folding it into my wallet. We pulled my bank statement showing the debit transaction, time-stamped to match the store records exactly. We photographed the ticket in its plastic sleeve, showing my handwriting on the back where I'd signed and dated it the night I'd realized I'd won. Every piece of evidence linked to the next like a chain. Unbreakable. Meanwhile, Laurent and Janelle were busy too. I didn't hear from them directly, but I heard through my sister that they'd been posting on social media pictures of champagne bottles, captions about blessed beyond measure and dreams coming true. They'd started telling people about the cars they were going to buy, the house they were going to build, the trips they were going to take. They were spending money they didn't have, making promises they couldn't keep, living in a fantasy world where they'd already won. It made me sad and angry at the same time. Sad because I'd raised someone who could be so careless, so entitled. Angry because they were lying to everyone, including themselves. Let them talk, Julian said when I mentioned the social media posts. Every public claim they make now will work against them later. They're building our case for us. Still, it hurt. It hurt to see my son's face smiling in those pictures, knowing he thought he'd gotten rid of me, knowing he'd kicked me out without a second thought and was now celebrating. One afternoon, Julian called me into his office. His face was serious. "Mrs. Carraway, I need to ask you something important. When your son and his wife realize you have the real ticket, they're going to fight. This could get ugly. They might say terrible things about you. They might drag this through the courts. Are you prepared for that?" I thought about all the night shifts I'd worked. All the times I'd been invisible, erased, pushed aside. All the years I'd put Laurent first while making myself small. "Yes," I said. "I'm prepared." "Good. Because tomorrow, we're filing a freeze order with the Lottery Commission. Once we do that, no one can claim the prize until ownership is legally determined. That's when they'll know something's wrong." My heart pounded. How long will it take? Depends on whether they fight it. Could be weeks. Could be months. But Mrs. Carraway, I want you to understand something. He leaned forward, his eyes serious. This isn't just about the money. This is about your dignity. Your self-respect. The right to be treated like a human being by your own child. If we do this, we're drawing a line. Are you ready for that? I thought about my cold teacup. About being called baggage. About 30 years of sacrifice being dismissed like it meant nothing. "I'm ready," I said. And that's when the first crack appeared in their empire. A phone call from the Lottery Commission that would shatter their perfect fantasy and force them to face the truth they'd been too greedy to see. The phone call came on a Tuesday morning. I was asleep when my cell phone rang, dragging me out of dreams into the grey light of my bedroom. I fumbled for it, squinting at the screen. Unknown number. "Hello? Mrs. Carraway?" A woman's voice, professional and neutral. "This is Sarah Chun from the State Lottery Commission. We need to speak with you about a claim that's been filed." My heart jumped into my throat. "A claim?" "Yes, ma'am. A Laurent Carraway has submitted paperwork to claim the jackpot from last month's drawing. He's listed you as a family member who may have information about the ticket's purchase. We're conducting routine verification before processing the payout." I sat up in bed, fully awake now. "What kind of verification?" "We need to confirm the purchase location, date, and ownership. Can you come to our office this week?" "Yes," I said. "I can come today." There was a pause. "That's not necessary, Mrs. Carraway. We can schedule." "I'll be there at 2 o'clock, I said firmly. "I have information you need to see." Another pause. "Very well. I'll make a note. Bring any relevant documentation." I hung up and immediately called Julian. He answered on the second ring. "They called me," I said. "The Lottery Commission. Laurent filed a claim." "Good." His voice was calm, steady. "That means our freeze order is working. They can't process his claim without investigating. Are you going in?" 2 o'clock today." "Perfect. I'll meet you there." Bring the envelope with everything we compiled. And Delphine? Don't worry. We're ready for this. But I was worried. My hands shook as I got dressed, as I made coffee I couldn't drink, as I double-checked the envelope for the 100th time. Everything was there: the ticket, the receipt, the bank statement, the photos, the store footage transcript. Comment below if you think the greedy son will face jail time before this is over. At 1:30, I drove to the Lottery Commission building downtown. It was a grey concrete structure that looked more like a DMV than a place where dreams came true. Julian was waiting in the parking lot, briefcase in hand. "Ready?" he asked. "As ready as I'll ever be." Inside, we were led to a conference room. Sarah Chun was there, a woman in her 40s with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense expression. She shook our hands and gestured to the chairs. "Mrs. Carraway, thank you for coming in. I'll be direct. Your son has filed a claim for the $180 million jackpot. He says the ticket was purchased by him but kept at your house for safekeeping. He's provided a ticket as evidence." "May I see it?" Julian asked. Sarah slid a photocopy across the table. I looked at it and almost laughed. It was a ticket, all right, but the numbers were wrong. Completely wrong. This wasn't even close to the winning combination. "This isn't the winning ticket," I said quietly. Sarah's eyebrows rose. "I'm aware. Which is why we haven't processed the claim. Mr. Carraway insists there's been a mistake, that perhaps the numbers were recorded incorrectly in our system. He's threatening legal action if we don't pay out immediately." Julian opened his briefcase. "Miss Chun, my client has the actual winning ticket, along with complete documentation of its purchase and ownership." He laid everything out on the table like dealing cards. The ticket in its plastic sleeve. The receipt with my name. The bank statement. The store records. The security footage stills showing me at the register. Sarah studied each piece carefully, her expression never changing. She made notes. Compared dates. Checked the ticket against her computer screen. Finally, she looked up. "Mrs. Carraway, when did you purchase this ticket?" "April 14th. Around 6 p.m. At Morton's Corner Store on Maple Street." "And your son, did he have access to this ticket at any point?" "No. I kept it in my desk drawer from the day I bought it." "Did you tell him you'd won?" "No. I didn't tell anyone until I spoke with Mr. Osei." Sarah made another note. Then she picked up her phone and made a call. "Send Mr. Carraway in, please." My stomach flipped. "He's here." "He's been waiting. I told him we needed to verify some information before proceeding." The door opened. Laurent walked in, and behind him, Janelle. Both of them were dressed like they were going to court. Him in a suit I'd never seen before, her in a dress that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage. When Laurent saw me, his face went white. Then red. "Mom? What are you doing here?" "Answering questions," I said calmly. "Same as you." Janelle's eyes went to the table, to the evidence spread out there. I watched her face change as she recognized the ticket, the receipts, the proof that her fantasy was crumbling. "That's our ticket," she said, pointing. "She stole it from us." Sarah's voice cut through the tension like a knife. "Mrs. Janelle Carraway, please sit down. Making false accusations won't help your case." But even then, their greed wasn't finished. Even with the evidence right in front of them, even with the truth staring them in the face, they came back with one final attempt to take what was never theirs. Laurent sat down slowly, his eyes never leaving the ticket on the table. "This is insane," he said, but his voice had lost its confidence. "Mom, you're really going to do this? You're going to take our money?" "Your money." I kept my voice level. Laurent, when did you buy a lottery ticket? We bought one a few weeks ago. We've been playing the same numbers for months. Show me your ticket. He fumbled with his wallet, pulled out the crumpled piece of paper Sarah had already shown us. The wrong numbers stared back at us. These aren't the winning numbers, I said quietly. That's because there was a mistake, Janelle jumped in. The store must have printed the wrong numbers, or the system glitched, or you never won, Julian said flatly. And rather than accept that, you decided to claim your mother-in-law's winnings as your own. The room went silent. Sarah cleared her throat. Mr. Carraway, I need you to explain something. You filed a claim stating this ticket was kept at your mother's house for safekeeping. But Mrs. Carraway's ticket was purchased on April 14th. Your ticket, she tapped the photocopy, was purchased on March 22nd. 3 weeks earlier. So which ticket are you claiming? Laurent's mouth opened and closed. Janelle gripped his arm, her knuckles white. We thought, Laurent started. You thought wrong, I said. My voice was still calm, but underneath, something hot and sharp was rising. You thought I'd just hand it over. You thought I didn't matter enough to stand up for myself. You thought 30 years of sacrifice meant I'd roll over and let you erase me. Mom, please. Laurent's voice cracked. We can work this out. We can split it. You don't need all that money anyway. And there it was. The final proof of who my son had become. Don't forget to hit the bell icon so you don't miss stories like this. Things are about to get heated. I don't need it. I repeated softly. Laurent, do you remember when you were 8 and you wanted to go on the class trip to Washington, D.C.? Do you remember how much that cost? He blinked. What does that have to? $300. I worked 4 extra shifts to pay for it. 4 12-hour shifts on top of my regular schedule. I didn't sleep for 3 days straight because I wanted you to have that trip. Mom, do you remember your senior prom? The tuxedo rental, the flowers, the limo you insisted on sharing with your friends? That was my entire paycheck that week. I ate peanut butter sandwiches for a month. Janelle shifted uncomfortably. Laurent wouldn't meet my eyes. College application fees. Your car insurance. The deposit on your first apartment. I paid for all of it. I never asked for anything back. I never kept score. Because that's what mothers do. We give everything and expect nothing. My voice was steady, but tears were rolling down my cheeks now. I didn't wipe them away. And you kicked me out of my own home. You told me you didn't need my pennies anymore. You looked at me like I was garbage. I'm sorry, Laurent whispered. Mom, I'm so sorry. We got caught up in the excitement, and... No. I stood up. You got caught up in greed. And when you thought you had money, you showed me exactly how little I meant to you. Sarah Chin stood as well. Mr. Carraway, Mrs. Janelle Carraway, based on the evidence presented today, your claim is denied. The ticket belongs to Mrs. Delphine Carraway. Furthermore, I'm required to report that your attempt to claim someone else's winnings may constitute fraud. The Commission will be reviewing this matter for potential legal action. Janelle's face went pale. Legal action? But we didn't, we thought. You thought you could steal from your mother-in-law, Julian said coldly. Intent matters. And your intent is documented in text messages, social media posts, and witness statements. You'd be wise to consult your own attorney. Laurent stood up so fast his chair scraped against the floor. This is ridiculous. She's my mother. We're family. Families don't sue each other. You're right, I said quietly. Families don't. Which is why what you did hurt so much. He stared at me. For just a moment, I saw something in his eyes, regret, maybe, or shame. But then Janelle tugged his arm and the moment passed. "Let's go," she hissed. "This is a waste of time." They left without another word. The door closed behind them, and the silence that followed felt heavy, final. Sarah looked at me. "Mrs. Carraway, I'm sorry you had to go through this. The commission will process your claim. You should have your payout within 60 days. "Thank you," I said. But I wasn't thinking about the money. I was thinking about the look on Lauren's face as he walked out. The way he couldn't meet my eyes. The way he'd chosen his wife's anger over his mother's pain. Outside in the parking lot, Julian walked me to my car. "You did well in there," he said. "I know that wasn't easy." "It was necessary," I said. "But Julian, what happens now? Will they really try to sue me?" He shook his head. "I doubt it. They have no case. And if they push too hard, they could face criminal charges for attempted fraud. My guess is they'll disappear for a while. Lay low." "And then what?" He smiled slightly. "Then you get to decide what kind of life you want. No more night shifts. No more exhaustion. Just peace on your terms." I drove home in a daze. The house felt different when I walked in. Lighter somehow, like a weight had been lifted. I made tea, real tea this time, and sat at my kitchen table with the cup warming my hands. The phone rang. My sister. "Delphine? I just heard from Laurent. He said something about the lottery. What's going on?" So I told her. Everything. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. Then, "Good for you. It's about time someone stood up to that boy." But even then, their desperation wasn't over. Because 2 weeks later, they showed up at my door with lawyers, threats, and one final attempt to take what they'd already lost. Easter Sunday arrived warm and bright. My sister Carol had invited the whole family to her house for dinner, something she did every year. Ham, scalloped potatoes, green bean casserole, the works. Usually I loved these gatherings. Usually I felt like I belonged. This year, I almost didn't go. "You have to," Carol insisted on the phone. "You can't hide forever. Besides, I want to see you. I want to celebrate with you." "Celebrate what?" I asked. "You standing up for yourself. That's worth celebrating." So I went. I wore a simple blue dress, brought a pie I'd baked that morning, and drove to Carol's house with my stomach in knots. Cars lined the street when I arrived. I recognized most of them, cousins, aunts, uncles. Family I hadn't seen in months. And there, parked near the driveway, was Laurent's car. My hands tightened on the steering wheel. Carol hadn't mentioned he'd be here. I almost turned around. Almost drove home. But something stopped me. Maybe pride. Maybe stubbornness. Maybe just exhaustion from running and hiding. I got out of the car and walked to the front door. Inside, the house smelled like Easter, ham and butter and fresh rolls. Voices floated from the living room, laughter and conversation mixing together. I followed the sound and found everyone gathered, drinks in hand, talking and catching up. Laurent and Janelle were there, standing near the window. They were dressed expensively. Him in pressed slacks and a designer shirt, her in a dress that probably cost more than my car payment. They looked like they'd walked off a magazine cover. When I walked in, the room went quiet. Carol rushed over and hugged me. "Delphine, I'm so glad you came. Let me get you something to drink. Would you open the envelope in front of everyone, or wait until later? Drop your answer in the comments." But I wasn't looking at Carol. I was looking at Laurent. His face had gone carefully blank, like a mask he'd pulled on. Janelle whispered something to him, but he shook his head. The afternoon crawled by. We ate dinner at the big table, everyone squeezed in elbow to elbow. I sat at one end. Laurent and Janelle sat at the other. Between us were cousins and aunts who kept up a steady stream of chatter, filling the silence with questions about work and weather and anything except the elephant in the room. I picked at my food. The ham was delicious, but it tasted like nothing. Across the table, I caught Laurent looking at me once, but he quickly looked away. After dinner, people scattered, some to the living room, some to the back porch, some helping Carol clean up. I was carrying dishes to the kitchen when the doorbell rang. Carol frowned. Who could that be? Everyone's already here. She went to answer it. I followed, something prickling at the back of my neck. The door opened. A man stood there in a dark suit, holding a leather folder. Behind him, a woman with a briefcase. Both of them looked professional, serious. Carol Hendricks? The man asked. Yes. We're looking for Delphine Caraway. We were told she'd be here. My stomach dropped. Carol glanced back at me, confused. I'm Delphine, I said, stepping forward. The man nodded. Ma'am, I'm Michael Torres, attorney representing Laurent and Janelle Caraway. We need to speak with you about a settlement offer. Behind me, I heard footsteps. Laurent and Janelle appeared in the hallway, their faces carefully neutral. They'd known this was coming. They'd planned it. You brought lawyers to Easter dinner? I asked Laurent directly. He had the decency to look uncomfortable. Mom, we just want to talk. Reasonably. Like adults. Then talk. Michael Torres pulled out papers from his folder. Mrs. Caraway, my clients are prepared to offer you a settlement. They'll drop any future claims regarding the lottery ticket in exchange for 40% of the winnings. I stared at him. 40%? It's a generous offer considering the family relationship and the emotional distress this situation has caused everyone involved. Emotional distress? My voice came out sharp. Is that what we're calling it? Janelle stepped forward. Delphine, be reasonable. We're family. We should be able to work this out without all the drama and legal fees. 40% is more than fair. You get the majority, we get enough to start our life, everyone wins. I looked at Laurent. Really looked at him. Is this what you want? You want me to give you money because you think you deserve it? He shifted his weight. Mom, it's not about deserving. It's about family. About being fair. Fair. The word burned in my throat. You kicked me out of my own house and now you want me to pay you for the privilege? That's not, we were just, he couldn't finish the sentence. The front door was still open. The lawyer and his associate stood there awkwardly, probably regretting taking this case. Behind me, I felt the whole family watching. Cousins peeking from the living room, Carol frozen in the hallway, everyone waiting to see what I'd do. And then, the real moment arrived, not with shouting or tears, but with the quiet appearance of someone I'd hoped would come. Julian Osei stepped into the doorway, 2 manila envelopes in his hand. Julian's timing was perfect. He'd called me that morning, asked if I'd be at Carol's house, told me he might stop by with some papers for me to sign. I'd said yes, not thinking much of it. But now, looking at the envelopes in his hand, I understood. He'd known Laurent would try something. And he'd prepared. Mr. Torres, Julian said, nodding at the other lawyer. I'm Julian Osei, representing Mrs. Caraway. If you're here to discuss settlement, perhaps we should do this properly. Michael Torres looked relieved to see another attorney. That would be preferable, yes. Then let's step outside. No need to ruin everyone's holiday dinner with legal discussions. But I didn't move. Something in me had shifted. I was tired of being pushed around, tired of being made to feel like I was the problem. No, I said quietly. Let's do this here. Let's be honest, in front of everyone. Julian's eyebrows rose slightly, but he nodded. Carol stepped back, giving us space. The family members who'd been pretending not to listen gave up the pretense and moved closer. Laurent looked uncomfortable. "Mom, maybe we should." "No more private conversations," I interrupted. "No more secrets. You wanted to talk about what's fair? Let's talk about it." Smash the like button if you think she handled it like a true queen. Julian handed me one of the envelopes. "Mrs. Caraway, this is the official documentation from the Lottery Commission confirming your ownership of the winning ticket. The payout has been processed. The funds will be in your account by the end of the week." He handed me the second envelope. "And this is the Commission's official statement regarding your son's attempted claim. They've determined it was filed without merit and with possible fraudulent intent." The room went dead silent. Laurent's face drained of color. Janelle grabbed his arm, her fingernails digging in. "Fraudulent intent?" Michael Torres asked sharply. "That's a serious allegation." "It's an official finding," Julian replied calmly. "Your clients attempted to claim a lottery ticket that belonged to someone else. They provided false documentation and made false statements to the Commission. The only reason they're not facing criminal charges is because Mrs. Caraway declined to press them." I looked at Laurent. "I could have had you arrested. Did you know that?" He shook his head slowly, unable to speak. "The police wanted to investigate. The Commission recommended it. But I said no." My voice cracked. "Because despite everything, you're still my son. And I didn't want to watch you go to jail." "Mom," his voice broke. "But that doesn't mean I'm giving you money," I continued. "Not 40%. Not 10%. Not $1. You tried to steal from me. You threw me away like garbage when you thought you were rich. And now you want me to reward that." Janelle's face twisted. "This is exactly why we needed our own money. Because you're selfish. You always have been. You held Laurent back his whole life with your guilt trips and your martyr act." Carol stepped forward. "Don't you dare talk to my sister that way." "It's true." Janelle's voice rose. "She acts like she sacrificed everything, but she just wanted Laurent to feel obligated to her forever. Well, we're done feeling obligated." "Good," I said softly. "Be done. Be free. Go live your life without my pennies." I turned to Julian. "What do I need to sign?" He opened a folder and handed me papers. "Just your acceptance of the lottery payout and confirmation that you decline to pursue legal action against your son and daughter-in-law." I signed. My hand was steady. Each stroke of the pen felt like closing a door. When I finished, I handed the papers back. Then I looked at Michael Torres. "Tell your clients there will be no settlement. Tell them if they continue to harass me, I'll reconsider pressing charges. And tell them they're not welcome in my home anymore." Laurent's face crumpled. "Mom, please. We can fix this. We can." "No," I said. "We can't. Because fixing this would require you to become someone you're not. And I'm done waiting for that person to show up." I picked up my purse and my pie, still untouched on the counter. Carol grabbed my arm. "Delphine, you don't have to leave." "I know. But I want to." I hugged her. "Thank you for inviting me. I'm sorry I ruined your dinner." "You didn't ruin anything," she whispered fiercely. "You just showed everyone who you really are." I walked to the door. Julian followed. Behind me, I heard Janelle start to cry, angry, frustrated tears. I heard Laurent say something to her, his voice low and urgent. I heard Michael Torres say something about exploring other options. But I didn't look back. In the driveway, Julian walked me to my car. The sun was setting, painting everything gold and pink. "You did good in there," he said. "I did what I had to do. What will you do now?" I thought about my small house, my paid-off mortgage, my plans to set up a scholarship fund for nursing students who reminded me of who I used to be, broke, tired, but still fighting. "I'm going to live my life," I said. "On my terms. Without apologies." He smiled. "Sounds like a good plan." I drove home as the sky darkened. The house was quiet when I walked in, but it was a good quiet now. A peaceful quiet. I made tea, chamomile again, and sat at my kitchen table with the envelope Julian had given me. Inside was the official letter from the Lottery Commission. My name. My winning ticket. My money. $180 million. I should have felt joy, excitement, relief. Instead, I just felt tired and sad, because the money couldn't fix what mattered most. It couldn't give me back my son, couldn't erase the cruel things he'd said, couldn't restore the relationship we'd lost. But it could give me something else. Dignity, independence, the ability to help others the way I'd always wanted to help him. And maybe I thought that would be enough. The money came through on a Thursday. I woke up to an email from the bank alerting me to unusual account activity. When I logged in and saw the balance, my hands started shaking so hard I had to put down my phone. $180 million. Minus taxes, minus Julian's fees, but still, more money than I could spend in 10 lifetimes. I sat at my kitchen table and cried. Not happy tears, not sad tears. Just tears of release. Of endings and beginnings. Of everything I'd lost and everything I'd gained. The first thing I did was call Julian. "It's there," I said. "Congratulations. Now comes the hard part, deciding what to do with it." "I already know what I'm doing with it." And I did. I'd been planning for weeks, ever since Julian first told me the case was solid. Late at night, unable to sleep, I'd made lists. Priorities. Dreams I'd never allowed myself to dream before. First, I paid off my house. Not because I needed to, the mortgage was small enough, but because I wanted the freedom of truly owning the place where I'd raised my son, where Thomas and I had been happy, where I'd survived the hardest years of my life. Second, I paid off my sister Carol's mortgage. She cried when I told her. "Delphine, I can't accept this." "You can and you will. You've helped me more times than I can count. Let me do this." Third, I set up the scholarship fund. The Delphine Caraway Nursing Scholarship for single mothers pursuing nursing degrees. Full tuition, plus a living stipend. I endowed it with $10 million. Julian helped me set up the foundation, find trustees, establish criteria. "This will help hundreds of students over the years," he told me. "Maybe thousands." "Good," I said. "That's what I want. I want them to know that hard work matters. That sacrifice matters. That you can survive the worst and still build something beautiful." Fourth, I donated to the hospital where I'd worked for 30 years. New equipment for the ICU. Better break room facilities for the night shift nurses. A fund for staff education and training. The hospital administrator called me personally. "Mrs. Caraway, this is incredibly generous. We'd like to name something after you. A wing, perhaps, or a program." "No," I said. "No names. Just use it to help people. That's all I want." I kept the rest, invested wisely, tucked away for security and peace of mind. I didn't buy a mansion or a fancy car. I fixed the leaky roof on my house and replaced the old water heater. I bought a new bed, a good one that didn't hurt my back. I allowed myself small luxuries, fresh flowers every week, good coffee instead of the cheap stuff, books I didn't have to borrow from the library. And I retired. No more night shifts. No more exhaustion. No more walking through life half asleep. I woke up when my body wanted to wake up. I stayed up to watch the stars if I felt like it. I lived on my own clock for the first time in decades. It was strange at first. Disorienting. I'd been working since I was 16 years old. I didn't know how to just exist without a schedule, without demands, without someone needing me. But slowly, I learned. I started gardening. I'd always wanted a garden, but never had the energy. Now I planted tomatoes and herbs and flowers that bloomed in colors I'd only seen in pictures. I worked in the dirt with my hands, feeling the earth beneath my fingers, watching things grow. I started painting. Watercolors, nothing fancy. Just colors on paper, shapes that pleased me, images that made me feel something. I was terrible at it, but it didn't matter. No one was grading me. No one was judging. I traveled a little. Not big trips, I'd never liked flying, but I drove up the coast, stayed in small hotels, ate at local diners, talked to strangers who became temporary friends. And I waited. I didn't hear from Laurent for 3 months. No calls. No texts. Nothing. Then, one afternoon in August, my doorbell rang. I looked through the peephole and saw him standing there. Alone. No Janelle. No lawyers. Just my son, looking smaller somehow, older. I almost didn't open the door. Almost let him stand there until he gave up and left. But I thought about Thomas. About the lessons he'd taught me. About holding on to receipts and papers because memory could be erased but truth couldn't. And I thought about another truth, that forgiveness didn't mean forgetting, but it also didn't mean holding on to anger forever. I opened the door. If this story moved you, share it with someone who needs hope today. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories of quiet justice. Laurent looked at me with red-rimmed eyes. Mom, he said. His voice cracked. Can we talk? That depends. What do you want to talk about? About how sorry I am. About what I did. About, he swallowed hard. About everything. I studied his face. He looked genuine. But I'd thought he was genuine before, too. I'd thought I knew my son, and I'd been wrong. Where's Janelle? I asked. Gone. We're divorced. Or we will be soon. She left when she realized there wasn't any money. He laughed bitterly. Turns out she wasn't as interested in me as she was in the lottery ticket. I'm sorry, I said. And I was. Not sorry she'd left, good riddance honestly, but sorry that my son had to learn that lesson the hard way. Can I come in? He asked. I hesitated. Then I stepped back and held the door open. He walked into the living room, the same room where he told me to get out months ago, and looked around like he was seeing it for the first time. His eyes landed on the new photos I'd hung. Pictures of my garden. Of Carol and her kids. Of places I'd visited. It looks nice, he said quietly. You look nice. Happy. I am happy, I said. For the first time in a long time. We sat down across from each other. The silence stretched. Finally, Laurent spoke. I don't know how to fix what I did. I don't know if I can fix it. But I want you to know that I see it now. I see how badly I messed up. How I treated you. What I said. His voice broke. Mom, I'm so ashamed. You should be, I said gently. He nodded, tears spilling down his cheeks. I know. When I thought we had that money, it was like I became someone else. Someone I don't recognize. Someone Dad would have been disappointed in. At the mention of Thomas, something in my chest squeezed. Your father taught me to keep receipts, I said. To document everything. to hold on to truth even when people tried to erase it. That's what saved me, Laurent. Not the money. The truth. I know. Do you? Because truth is more than just paper. It's about who you are when no one's watching. When there's nothing to gain. When doing the right thing costs you something. He wiped his face with his sleeve like a little boy. I failed that test. Yes, I said. You did. We sat there in the truth of that for a long moment. I don't expect you to forgive me, Laurent said finally. I know I don't deserve it. But I wanted you to know that I'm trying to be better. I got a job. Nothing fancy, just warehouse work. I'm living in a small apartment. I'm going to therapy. I'm trying to figure out who I am without, he gestured vaguely. Without all the greed and entitlement. I looked at my son. Really looked at him. And I saw both versions, the greedy stranger who'd kicked me out, and the little boy who'd held my hand when he was scared. I don't know if we can fix this, I said honestly. I don't know if I can trust you again. But I'm willing to try. Slowly. One conversation at a time. His face crumpled with relief. Thank you. Mom, thank you. Don't thank me yet. This isn't forgiveness, Laurent. This is just an open door. What you do with it is up to you. He nodded. I understand. We talked for an hour. Carefully. Testing each word like walking on ice. He told me about the divorce, about realizing how shallow his marriage had been. About the therapy sessions where he'd had to confront the person he'd become. I told him about the scholarship fund, about helping nursing students who reminded me of myself. About learning to garden and paint and exist without exhaustion. When he left, we hugged. Brief, awkward but real. Can I call you? He asked at the door. Yes, I said. But Laurent? No more lies. No more games. If we do this, we do it honestly. I promise, he said. I watched him drive away, and I didn't know if I'd ever see him again. Didn't know if this reconciliation would last or if it was just another disappointment waiting to happen. But I'd meant what I said. The door was open. What he did with it was his choice. As for me, I was done sacrificing myself for other people's comfort. Done making myself small so others could feel big. Done accepting crumbs when I deserved a place at the table. I went back inside and made myself dinner. A real dinner, the kind I used to make for Laurent when he was young. Roasted chicken and vegetables and fresh bread. I set the table properly, with a cloth napkin and my good dishes. And I ate alone, but not lonely. Because here's the lesson, the one I want anyone listening to take with them: quiet justice is possible. Even when people try to erase you, even when they weaponize paperwork and power, you can reclaim truth with calm courage, with allies who see you, and with the kind of patience that feels like loneliness but grows into strength. Paper trails matter. So does self-respect. Money doesn't buy happiness, but it can buy freedom. Freedom to choose who you want to be. Freedom to help others. Freedom to live on your own terms. And sometimes, the most powerful revenge isn't shouting, "I told you so." It's the silence when the truth speaks for you. I finished my dinner, washed the dishes, and stepped out onto my back porch. The garden was blooming, tomatoes red and heavy on the vine, flowers nodding in the evening breeze. The sky was painted with sunset colors, gold and pink and purple bleeding together. I stood there breathing in the smell of earth and growing things, and I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. Not because everything was perfect. Not because my son had magically transformed. Not because the money had solved all my problems. But because I'd stood up for myself. Because I'd drawn a line and refused to be erased. Because I'd chosen dignity over desperation, truth over comfortable lies. The evening air was warm against my skin. Somewhere in the distance, I heard children laughing, a dog barking, life continuing in all its messy, beautiful chaos. I thought about all the night shifts I'd worked, all the miles I'd walked, all the times I'd made myself invisible so someone else could shine. And I realized something important. Those sacrifices hadn't been wasted. They'd taught me strength. They'd shown me what I was capable of surviving. But I was done surviving. Now I was living. Inside, my phone buzzed. A text from Carol. Dinner Sunday? I'm making your favorite pot roast. I smiled and texted back, I'll be there. And I'm bringing dessert. Simple. Normal. The kind of life I'd always wanted but never thought I deserved. Another text came through, this one from the Scholarship Foundation. They'd received over 200 applications for the first year of funding. 200 single mothers, working impossible jobs, raising kids alone, trying to build better futures. I'd get to help 12 of them this year. 12 women who wouldn't have to choose between rent and textbooks. 12 families who'd have a fighting chance. That mattered more than any mansion or yacht or luxury vacation ever could. As darkness fell, I went back inside and locked the door, not to keep the world out but to keep my peace in. I made chamomile tea, the real kind from fresh leaves in my garden, and sat in my favorite chair with a book I'd been meaning to read for months. The house was quiet, but it was my quiet. My space. My life. And for the first time in 62 years, that was enough. If this story touched your heart, if it made you think about the people in your life who give everything and ask for nothing, do me a favor. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. Share it with the tired mother working double shifts. Share it with the person who's been made to feel invisible. Share it with anyone who's ever been told they don't matter. Because they do matter. We all do. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss more stories like this. Stories about quiet strength, about justice that doesn't need to shout, about people who refuse to be erased. Drop a comment below and tell me, what would you have done in Delphine's position? Would you have fought back, or would you have walked away? Would you have given Laurent another chance, or closed the door forever? Your thoughts matter. Your stories matter. Share them in the comments and let's inspire each other. Because at the end of the day, we're all just trying to live lives that mean something. Lives where truth matters more than money. Lives where self-respect isn't negotiable. Lives where love doesn't require us to disappear. That's the kind of life worth fighting for. That's the kind of life worth living. And that's the kind of story worth telling. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being here. And remember, your worth isn't measured by what others take from you. It's measured by what you refuse to give up, your dignity, your truth, your right to take up space in this world. Stand tall. Speak your truth. Keep your receipts. And never, ever let anyone make you feel invisible. Until next time, this is Delphine's story. But maybe in some way it's your story too. Subscribe. Turn on those notifications. And I'll see you in the next one, where we'll share another story of courage, justice, and the quiet strength that changes everything. Take care of yourselves. You matter more than you know.